Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us here today on our newest edition of Financial Fridays webinar series, hosted here by Thimble Island Private Wealth. Again, my name is Matt Fleming. I'm a certified financial planner here with Thimble Island Private Wealth. And today we're going to talk a little bit about the basics of budgeting. So again, we'll kind of dive in here, but when we talk with folks about budgeting, the idea of just thinking about how to create a budget often can be pretty challenging. When your days are taken up, work, family, friends, the energies that's required to sort of manage your life, it becomes harder and harder to focus on your financial life. And that's what we're here to kind of hopefully give you some tips today, to give some strategies and some thought about how to help you develop a budget, or if you have a budget, some ways to develop some better spending, or again, how we can help you maybe save a little bit more in certain places going forward here. So we'll kind of dive in here and get going here. We will be taking some questions at the end of the program, so please feel free to keep those top of mind, and we'll open it up for questions at the end here. So we're going to go through some steps for creating a budget, 4 different ways that we can kind of help you move forward. Some strategies on, like I mentioned, developing some better spending habits, tracking the cash, and then how folks like myself might be able to help in some certain ways as well to kind of give some additional guidance when it comes to budgeting. So the basics of budgeting. So a budget really should be the foundation of your financial lives. It's all those necessary kind of items that you have that are there to fund your financial goals. So that could be buying a bigger home, funding college education for loved ones in the family, starting your own business. We talk a lot to folks about establishing emergency funds. And then, of course, the big one, which everybody thinks about when you think about budgeting, saving for retirement. And really the budget kind of helps, in my opinion, helps you create that sort of foundation and roadmap to achieving some of these longer term sort of financial goals, if you will. So we're going to talk a little bit about the steps on creating a budget. So the first one is start with the goals that you have, and then most importantly, write them down. Once they're on paper, they become real. So you can always sort of be thinking about things that you want to achieve in the future, but once they're sort of written down and logged, then they sort of become real, in my opinion. We've seen that a lot of times with folks, is you always have an idea of where you want to go and what types of savings that you want to have. But until they're sort of down in writing and you have steps that you're thinking about or have down to be able to track that progress or measurable goals, it doesn't really become real, in my opinion. So these are just a couple of examples of some things and goals that you can have. Is you can say, hey, I want to be able to save $1,000 in an emergency fund by April 1st, or whatever the date may be. I want to pay off that credit card debt in the next 18 months that I have. The simplest way is to sort of put those goals down and then divide that dollar amount that you're trying to achieve by the amount of months that it's going to take to achieve that goal, to figure out exactly what type of money you need to be putting away to achieve those types of goals. Now, we'll talk about some other strategies here later on that will help you, in addition to that, sort of account for if they're longer term goals and maybe account for inflation, etc. But that's a great way to sort of start with creating a budget. The second step is to know your income. And a lot of folks have a general idea sometimes. Net pay, not gross pay. And what we mean by that is what's the amount of money that hits your bank account every month? It's not what your salary is, because don't forget, you're going to have deductions that come out of that salary. It's what hits your bank account each month. That's what we want to be thinking about to starting place of our income when we're thinking about and creating a budget. This next one is really a big one. It's total those monthly expenses. We put in here, don't forget occasional expenses like doctor visits and car insurance. Sometimes car insurance is is a monthly expense. But some of the things that occur every month are groceries, rent, any sort of student loans, car payments that you might have, credit cards, your cell phone, cable bill. Um, you know, we often advise folks to build in sort of like, we'll call it kind of like an entertainment budget, but think about eating out, things of those nature. An easy way to do this is to kind of look through bank and credit card statements to get a realistic picture of what your sort of monthly spending looks like. But all that sort of works to the next step where we're going to say, okay, well, we know what our monthly income is. We know what those sort of monthly living expenses we have. And then we also have, okay, some of our financial goals that we're also saving. So when you're creating that budget, one of the things that I tell folks often too is build into that monthly budget plan savings that you're doing for certain things as well, because then it automates it. It becomes just a every sort of month occurrence, and you start to think about if it's a planned saving strategy that you have. Yeah, it's very simply add up your income, those less those monthly expenses, any of those additional financial goals that you have and that you're saving for, and you have what's left over. Now, in its simplest form, if you are left over with money at the end of this sort of budget exercise, you're in a good place. That means you're spending less overall than you have coming in every month. And that's a positive outcome in terms of creating a budget that works well for your current lifestyle. If you get to the end of that and the balance is negative, well, then we have some more work to do. And that's really revisiting, some of the goals and the expenses if you're finding yourself at a deficit from that monthly budget every month. Because what we want to try and avoid is having bills start to stack up, credit card bills start to accumulate, and then we're in a pattern where it's very, very hard to break, given how high some of those sort of, we'll call them revolving debt types of instruments like credit cards can be. So what do we do in that instance if we are in a scenario where our outlays are more than our income? Well, we want to revisit the goals and the expenses. We want to go through that budget with you and help to prioritize some things in terms of, okay, are there some areas that we can sort of cut out some additional expenses? Do we need to have the seven different streaming services every month, or can we live with just three and save a few dollars in terms of in our monthly budget? In our household, the sort of running joke that I like to share is once we sort of combined our households, my wife and I found out after a period of time when we sort of did this exercise and we're sort of collecting monthly expenses, we were each paying for a Netflix account. Totally unnecessary. We were only using one of those accounts, but those are the types of things we want to try and help you identify to see if there's some ways that we can sort of adjust and prioritize some of those goals and expenses that you have to create a budget that's manageable and fits with inside of your income needs. The other part is that some of those longer term financial goals, maybe change the amount of time or money that you're thinking to meet those goals to also kind of help you fit within sort of that monthly income perspective. This last one is sort of a little bit of a funny one to think about, but find a way to increase your income. Sometimes that's easier said than done when there's not, a ton of hours in the day sometimes, and we have family obligations, et cetera. But those are some different things to think about when we're sort of trying to make sure that the budget aligns with our monthly income objectives and our longer term financial goals, if you will. And then the last part of the sixth step, so to speak, is stay connected with that. So, this is a way that this is one of the sites that gives some money savings ideas as well as some other sort of financial tips. We've got a great a system that I'll share with you here at the end of the program as well, that it allows you to sort of track and stay connected to that budget and stay connected to those savings goals that you have as well in the future. And oftentimes it's, revisiting it, making sure that as things continue to increase in cost, that we're accounting for that within our budget and making sure we're keeping ourselves in good financial standing kind of going forward. So some ways to move forward. So some of these are kind of some of the tips that we give folks when we're talking about, okay, things to think about when we're establishing a budget and starting to really think about, okay, do we have that, what we call an emergency fund? That's that sort of cash on hand that we are able to say, okay, if everything sort of hits the fan, do we have 3 to 6 months of living expenses sort of set aside, separate from your traditional checking account that has either no or low transaction fees, easy access. If it's making some earning a little bit of money, that's a good thing. But it doesn't need to be. But again, it's really what you want to try and do is have this easily accessible for you. In the pinch saying, hey, listen, our water heater went, or we've got to replace a roof. How do we help you figure out what that number is? We want to look at those expenses that you have, and then how do we help you fund that is really walking through the exercises of saying, okay, we've got a little bit left over each month from our budget. We want to start to build that emergency fund for the future there as well. The 3 to 6 months is the rule of thumb, like I mentioned. And if you have two incomes in the household, it's really, 3 months of expenses. If you're one income in the household, we really like to look a little bit further for the 6 months of expenses there, if you will. How much do you need to, or I'm sorry, this is talking about how many Americans actually are saving in an emergency fund right now. So how much do folks have enough to cover 6 months plus of expenses? Only about 25% of Americans have that number set aside. A majority have, of 19% still have 3 to 5 months. A majority of the folks at 51% have less than 3 months of living expenses sort of set aside. And then 25% actually have none, and 5% actually don't have any. The idea of sharing this here is just really to get you thinking, hey, do I have those sort of basic living expenses sort of set aside somewhere to cover me for that 3 to 6 month period? The answer to that question is unfortunately, in most Americans' cases, no. But that's really what we're hoping to share with you today to help you develop a plan to get to that place. The number two thing here on the list is, and probably have heard this before, but pay yourself first. We always advise you that, besides building that emergency fund, the next thing to consider is making those contributions to retirement savings accounts. So whether that's through an IRA or through an employer-sponsored plan type of retirement account, make sure that you're doing sort of that automatic payroll deduction or automatic deduction out of your bank account every month to start that sort of longer-term retirement savings strategy and build that into the budget, like we had said. And then it becomes second nature. You don't even think about it for the future there. Number three, and this is a big one, stop eating out so much. If you've gone to a restaurant lately, you've probably noticed that a lot of them have increased their prices due to gas prices, food costs, everything's costing a little bit more. We certainly, we've got built into our household budget. We're going out once a week or so to one of the local restaurants in the area that we like to frequent, still supporting them. But, we've noticed a couple of times that there's inserts now in some of those menus that are accounting for some price changes, given what's going on, with the overall inflationary environment. So, limit those lunches and dinners out as best as you can. Cooking at home more, planning out a weekly dinner menu definitely helps in that regards. We have in the office here, we've got several folks oftentimes leveraging those leftovers for lunch the next day. So heating up those leftovers in the microwave. And then this last one is an interesting one. So when you're going to the grocery store, I've been victim to it. I'm sure other folks on this call have been as well. If you go without a list, you tend to have at the end of your shopping experience, a lot more things that you weren't even thinking about. So make a list, stick to it, and kind of stick to the plan. Only buy those items on the list. You'll be surprised how much you'll actually save on those grocery bills if you do that sort of going forward there. This is a tough one, especially in the environment we're in right now and what gas costs. Find cheaper gas and entertainment we build in here. So save on gas with apps like Gas Buddy. Again, if you're a member at like a Costco or a BJ's, you get some discounts on gas there. This is a big one where we're seeing a lot of times with folks with their budgets. Um, you really almost can't account for what we've seen in terms of the increase in gas price, over the last couple of months. So it's almost doubled in some cases, depending on where you are in the country as well. It's, a significant expense. So as much as you can to save, 4 or 5 cents on a fill up per gallon over time, that's going to definitely save you some money in the long run. Some other options for entertainment are like Living Social or Groupon. So again, a lot of times you can get deals for restaurants, whether it be going to the movies, other types of things that you might be looking to get outside and, maybe attend amusement park, things of that nature. They have a lot of great deals there. And you can get concert deals, through Ticketmaster and Live Nation sometimes as well. So again, these are all just kind of things to be able to think about, ways that you might be able to save a couple of bucks here and there as you're doing things in your daily life. One of the biggest things that we talk about is, not spending so much money. We want to talk about developing those better spending habits when we do that as well. So it's easy to say, hey, let's cut some of these things out of our life if we don't necessarily really need them. But then it's also really important for us to think about how we are spending, even when we are spending on some of these sort of necessary things. So this one's a little bit harder depending on, what we're talking about, but as much as you can, don't buy those name brand products. If there's generic versions or store brands, a lot of times they can be up to half of the cost of the same type of item with that brand name attached to it. If you're using an ATM, don't use an out-of-network ATM unless some banks or credit unions reimburse for that. But if you're using an ATM as much as possible, use one that's within the network, because otherwise you're going to be potentially paying a fee for every time you take a withdrawal out of those, and those can add up significantly over time. This one sort of made me laugh a little bit, is don't buy lottery tickets. So instead of that, save more into your retirement plan or towards some of the other financial goals. What I'll tell you is we do have some folks that we work with on planning and in the budget, we build in some things like, I won't say lottery tickets, but we've got some folks that say, well, I like to go to the casino, once every couple of months with a couple $100. Great. We're going to build that into the budget and we're going to account for that. But being a little bit more cognizant of, hey, we're not just getting gas and buying a lottery ticket, that can save you some money here and there. Too many apps. And this is something, I've got 2 little girls. We're starting to see it more and more with them. They're coming and asking us, hey, can I download this game to my tablet? I'm guilty of having a lot of apps on my phone, but if possible, avoid, the low price sort of apps or, look at like a free alternative when you're looking at some of these options, and be mindful of those in-app purchases. Again, with the technology now being in our hands here, it makes it way, way easier to be able to click a button and be able to find that purchase, hit your credit card with you out really having to think about it. And that brings it to the next point here is that impulse shopping. So if you're prone to impulse shopping, try not to be. That's a good starting place. But start shopping. This is a reliable accountability buddy. I tried this with my wife, and then my wife's accountability buddy's husband called me and said, "Okay, now my wife's going shopping with your wife, and they're still coming home with as much things." But try and hold each other accountable, even if it's in your household. try and follow kind of those planned purchases that you're doing, and less impulse shopping sort of going forward. And don't run a tab. So pay as you go. And this is a big one. With how credit cards work with that sort of revolving debt and those high interest rates, if we're making a purchase, we want to be cognizant and trying to pay that off every month, so that we're not getting hit with those high interest charges, and we're not actually starting to see that sort of tab, so to speak, build over time. That way, you know exactly what you're spending. I'm not saying don't use credit cards, but I'm saying be cognizant of what you're doing and be paying it off every month, and really not using the credit cards if possible, unless it's an expense that you already have the money sort of set aside and you know you're going to be paying it off. This next one is sort of track the cash. So, we want to talk about some ways that you can, and the next thing here is we'll talk about, trying to figure out where that money's going. There's some tools that are available online. We've got some great tools. No matter what tool that you decide to use, the most important thing is to just sort of track it. You'll be sort of amazed at, just having a little bit of daily discipline, in terms of maybe it's not buying that extra coffee on the way into work. Just that little bit of extra discipline can help you moving forward in the right direction, developing that budget. You'll find that, maybe some of that money that you might have been spending without really even thinking about it, could have potentially better used for, different saving strategies or longer term goals that you might have. So there's many tools available online. But the easiest way is to sort of create like a spending journal. It doesn't need to be anything fancy. It's just tracking and your income and the spending. You could use a notebook, if you're so inclined to do, in terms of pen and paper, or you can, go digital. I'm a big fan of Excel. I have Excel spreadsheets for our household expenses and family expenses. And then we'll talk about some other strategies and apps as well that you can also utilize if you're so inclined. These are just a few different types of apps that you can take a look at. These are really popular budgeting apps. And I'm going to demonstrate for you as well a tool that we have available to you, to kind of help you put this all into perspective and kind of bring your financial lives into sort of one sort of hub, if you will. The real reason that you do this and you start to track your spending, your budgeting, and your inflows and your outflows is the idea that it will help you start to create a better picture of really calculating your net worth. And in the simplest form, what your net worth is the assets. So it's everything that you own. So that's your savings, your investments, retirement accounts, your car, your home, less those liabilities that you have. So mortgages, student loans, car loans, credit card debt. And that gives you, when you subtract your assets minus your liabilities, that gives you that picture of your net worth. And what you'll find is over time, as we start to pay down some of these liabilities and we focus on sticking within that budget, plan savings, strategic savings, what we should start to see is our net worth start to increase over time as we pay down debt and we save more. And that's overall what we really want to try and help you do. And that's what working with like a financial services professional can do, is to kind of help you sort of one-on-one provide guidance and advice on that budgeting, debt management, and other kind of longer term goals that you have. One-on-one advice to, again, help you understand, okay, am I saving in the right place? Should I be saving as much into my retirement plan right now? It's always great to save for retirement, but maybe we don't have that emergency fund sort of set aside. So maybe we want to balance our savings from our retirement plan to our emergency fund while we build that and then refocus on that retirement savings. These are all different types of conversations depending on your individual goals and needs that we can kind of help you figure out and educate you on the different types of investment vehicles that are available to help you achieve these different goals, and how much risk that you're comfortable with, sort of to achieve those goals, if you will. So what I'm gonna pull up on the screen here right now is so this is a snapshot of our planning software that we have available. So if we work with you currently as a client, hopefully this is familiar to you, taking a look at our planning hub here. If we don't work with you currently, this is certainly something that we can sit down and speak with you about. But basically, this is helping to put together and put down on paper both short-term and long-term goals, and then sort of help you create and catalog and get organized in your financial life. So this is an example of a mid-40s couple, and they've got some sort of college planning goals that they're trying to look for coming up in the near future. And here's that sort of net worth picture. Again, it's showing what their investment assets plus their home assets are, less some of those liabilities that they have, gives us what our current net worth is. And it shows you, again, based on some of the longer term goals, what type of success level that we're going to have based on saving habits that we're doing, investments that we have, and our what those actual spending goals for the future looks like. But in terms of today's conversation specifically, where we like this strategy is because this is an interactive website. It enables you to kind of come in and link any of those bank accounts, credit cards, mortgage accounts that you have at outside vendors. And what it enables you to do is once those are linked, it enables you to monitor transactions. So this is actually where we were able to dial in and say, oh, wait, there's 2 Netflix charges. What's that all about? You can actually create, like we were talking about, that sort of expense and income analysis. So what's my income that comes in every month versus what those expenses that are going out every month? It'll help you sort of snapshot the last 6 months to get an idea of what that number is if you don't have it. And then it will actually help you go through a budgeting exercise to basically say, okay, what are these planned expenses every month, depending on the different categories, based on past spending that I've done? And it will help me sort of formulate that budget going forward. So this is a great tool to be able to build that budgeting in addition to helping you understand as a household, where are our assets located? How are they allocated in terms of stocks versus bonds versus cash? And then there's also within this site as well a strategy called Next Best Dollar. And this is a conversation we have with a lot of clients that are trying to save for certain goals that they have in the future to help them understand, okay, if I have $1 left over at the end of my budget exercise that's not allocated for anything, and I've already done some planned savings in my retirement plan, et cetera, and I have $1 left over, where's that dollar going to best serve me based on the goals that we've established with inside the plan? And will actually help us understand, okay, if we're going to save an extra $100 a month, should we be putting that into our cash reserves? Should we be putting it into this stock market, or should we be putting it into our retirement plan? It'll help us make that decision and formulate that with you based on the goals and the information that we sort of plug into the software. So this is a great strategy. And if we haven't engaged with you before, working a little bit on that, we'd love to talk with you a little bit more about how to incorporate that and help you with that sort of overall budgeting and longer term financial goals there that you have. So that concludes sort of my prepared comments for today. Hopefully you found a couple of tips and tricks there when it comes to budgeting that will be helpful to you moving forward. And I'd be happy to open it up for questions. So if you have any questions, I believe there's a reaction button on the screen where you can sort of raise your hand, and we'll go ahead and unmute you. And if there's if you don't feel comfortable asking the question, we're always available. You can feel free to send us an email, reach out to us by phone, and we're happy to answer those sort of one-on-one questions you might have there as well. So any questions on any of the topics that we covered there today? And we'll give it a moment here to queue up. And while we're seeing if there's any questions, I'll give a quick plug for our next Financial Friday webinar that's going to be happening coming up in July. um, uh, towards the end of July. I apologize. I think it's July 24th. But you'll get an email with some of the details there. We're actually going to be joined by Jeff Bookbinder, who's the chief equity strategist with our LPL investment research team. Jeff's going to be joining us to give us a little bit of a mid-year sort of breakdown on where the market's gone, what's sort of taken place here in the first half of the year. So there's a lot there to get into, but also a little bit of a forecast through the end of the year and beyond. So a little bit of like a mid-year market check-in there. So be sure to be on the lookout for that coming up in July on Friday, July the 24th. So at this point, it doesn't look like we've had any questions queue up there. So again, I'll sort of start where or end, I should say, where I started in saying thank you for taking the time. Hopefully, you're finding some good information that you can take back and use in your daily lives here. These Financial Friday webinars, are really a lot of fun to do for us and provide some of this great information to you here. So hopefully you found some things that you can improve in your daily lives in that budgeting aspect there. And thank you very much for taking time here on a Friday. It's I know here in the Northeast and along the Eastern Seaboard, it's pretty warm out there, but it looks like summer's finally arrived. So certainly can't thank you enough for taking some time here to join us today, and hope everybody has a great weekend ahead, and we'll see you hopefully in July. Thanks again. Have a great day.